All right, let's let a few people filter in. I'll retweet that we're live. We'll talk about James going through the table a bunch of times. It'll be a fun pod. We'll have a good time. All right, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
What's going on, everybody? How are you all doing here live from Orchard Park, Elliott Shore Parks? Tucker Bagley, no James Seltzer today. James still
Still
out in the
recovering.
cold, still recovering from being out in that disgusting Buffalo weather for a few hours. But we got a game to talk about because, man, a lot to take away from that when the Eagles go into Buffalo and get what is still a good win. I think that we're all going to agree they did not play their best football, but to go into Buffalo against a team that they very well could see in the Super Bowl, a team that doesn't almost never loses in December, and to win that game, I still think is a very impressive win overall. I think they showed some toughness. Obviously, the defense was outstanding. We'll start with that. The offense, not really what you wanted to see. I thought a curious decision from Nick Sirianni at the end, but in a game where it was raining almost all game, wasn't really windy, but certainly rain and weather were an impact in the game. To leave with a win, I think the Eagles should still feel really good. Tucker, where are you at with it, buddy?
Yeah, I think you can look at it at two ways, and the Eagles kind of showed you the two paths that they may walk come playoff time, and that's the path to them winning and them going deep into the postseason, maybe winning the
Yeah.
Super Bowl, and the path of them, maybe going home wild card weekend, and that's the defense is dominant. The defense might be, I don't know if it's the best defense in the NFL. The Texans have a really good defense. There are other great units out there, but that's clearly where they're hanging their hat right now is their defense and how well the defense is played. And then you look at the offense and man, what they did in the second half. I mean, they had 17 total yards. I guess 16 after Hurts took
Hmm.
the knee at the end of the game to end it. But you look at kind of what they did offensively, and you realize, if they're to play the Rams and maybe they give up 24 points, the offense might not be able to score that much to kind of get them out of it and have them win a shootout. So I think you can kind of look at it from both angles. But I'm with you. I'm encouraged by the way this defense has played. But man, that offense in the second half was just brutal.
So I think, like, look, I can only be honest about how I feel, and I'm always someone that's going to feel as good as the offense played. And I think that's why the past few weeks I felt really good about this team. It felt like they were taking steps in the right direction. Today felt like a step back for the Eagles. Still a quality win. I'll be down in the locker room in a little bit, and I'm sure they'll say a win's a win. We got the job done. It's hard to win in the NFL, and the Bills are a quality opponent. But the Bills were not good at stopping the run. That's not a strength of theirs. And I did not think the running game was overly impressive today. I think Saquon did average over 5 yards a carry, or he was right around that. But I
He
just
finished at
watching it.
3.6.
Okay, so all right, so that did fall down in the final few drives. But the last few weeks, I didn't think the running numbers were that good. But just watching it, it felt like they were running the ball effectively in a way that helped the offense. It did not feel like that today. And in the rain, against a defense that was 31st in the NFL coming into this, to not be able to run the ball felt like a major step back. And then you just go with the offense in general. 16 total yards in the second half. I don't care who you're playing, but that's just completely, it's a complete failure by everybody involved. So I leave this game feeling like I think they should be the favorite in the NFC, but I also think you put it really well that they are playing a dangerous game with the way that they have decided to try to win this year. Now, I don't think that they got super conservative. I'm sure the chat is saying the coaches got super conservative, but to me, they just didn't execute well. Like they tried to throw it long on the Devontae deep pass on third down. The issue was on the first and second down, they run the ball, and you could say that's conservative, but the goal there was to kill clock to a certain extent. And again, the Bills have a really bad run defense, so you should be able to run the ball of them effectively, where you're getting into a 3rd and 6 at worst, hopefully, maybe 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4. They're in a 3rd and 12. They do try to throw it deep. They had the Devontae catch in the second half that didn't count. That wasn't a great throw by Jalen, but there were some throws down the field. They weren't completed. So I actually don't think the team got ultra aggressive. I just think they didn't execute really well. And as a result, the Bills had the chance to hang in the game. Like that's the risk that they're going to run come playoff time is if you're only up like 2 possessions, really less than 2 possessions since it's 13, like you could have lost. The blocked extra kick by Jalen Carter ends up being huge, but you allow yourself to be open to fluke plays happening, like the big catch down the field by Brandon Cooks, the trick play where it's kind of like what's it, not the stat, like the hook and ladder, whatever
The
it's
hook and
called, where the,
ladder.
the
Yeah.
hook and ladder where the guy hands it off. Like if you keep it to 13-0, where the offense isn't killing clock and also isn't putting up points, you leave yourself susceptible to freak things happening. And they'd almost bit them. Like I understand why Buffalo went for two, but I think if they kicked extra point, the Eagles lose that game. Like you never know, but I think the Bills had all the momentum. And look, he was wide open there too. Josh Allen missed it, and that's on Josh Allen. But like that was wide open and there to be had. I would also say that before we start to talk about how good the defense was, like situationally, it feels like Vic Fangio's defense doesn't really step up late in games. Like you think about the Atlanta game last year, this year they let him go down the field. There's been other examples. The Jaguars last year they go all the way down the field. They get an interception at the end, but it doesn't seem like they lock the door in those drives. And that's another risk of playing the super tight game. Is while Fangio's defense, I think for the past almost two full seasons has been unbelievable. They've been like mostly unbelievable in the first 50, 7 minutes. And then if the game is tight for the final 3 minutes, they do let teams go down the field like they did today. So, I thought if you would have told me before the game that they beat the Bills, I think I would leave feeling much more optimistic and better about it than I do. Maybe people will say I'm being too much of a hater, but like, I just look, I picked them to lose. So if to win is impressive, I just leave this feeling like it was a step back more than a step forward.
Yeah, and I think about what Jordan Mailata said leading into this game, where he said it was a standard game, right? Like it's a measuring stick game, and
Exactly.
that
Yep.
was kind of the storyline, right? The Eagles don't have a ton to play for; they can obviously make the number 2 seed in the NFC, but this is more or less a measuring stick to figure out kind of where you were after beating up on inferior competition for the last 2 weeks. And if you're the defense, I think you can certainly get a passing grade, but if you're the offense, if you're the offensive line, and you look at what you put on tape in the second half, I don't think anyone's going to be happy with it, right? Like
Mhm.
I look ahead to tomorrow night in 23 hours when you and Spike and Jordan Mailata are sitting down at Chickies and Pete's. I don't think he's going to be super happy about
No,
the
he
way the
won't be. I
offense
agree.
played. Like he'll say a win is a win, and he'll certainly give the defense their props. But I think for the most part, pretty much everybody in the offensive side of that locker room can't be happy with how they played.
So, a couple things that's also on my mind that I want to make sure I get to if I go down to the locker room. First, what did you think about the decision by Nick to not burn a timeout at the end of the game? Am I missing something here? So, to recap, there's 18 seconds left. There's a touchdown that's originally ruled a touchdown. It gets called back. And so the ref says that both teams have a chance to use a timeout there to prevent 10 seconds from running off the clock. And both teams elected not to. Now, maybe I'm missing something, but why wouldn't you use a timeout there? He had two timeouts left. There was 18 seconds left. The Bills were going to run one more play on fourth down. If they get it, which they did, you then, in theory, get the ball back with 14 seconds, whatever it might be, 13 seconds left, but only needing a field goal. Now, I know it is unlikely in that situation, but if you have that time, you at least have a chance. So, what, like, am I missing something, or was that just like pretty bad game mismanagement there? Because if it was, that's another thing that I feel bad about coming out of this game. Because I feel like at times this year, especially this year in the post game pod, we've talked about decisions by Nick late in games that haven't really made sense, and this feels like another one.
Yeah, my only argument for the other side would be, and I get, maybe you want the ball 14 seconds, set to 4 seconds left, but really, what are the odds there with one timeout? The flip side would be, what if you get a defensive penalty and there's still 10 seconds on the clock instead of 3 seconds on the clock? You know what I mean? Obviously, they're only
Okay,
playing
yeah, that's a
with
good one.
one play there, but like the odds of the Bills getting another play inside the goal line, if you get a defensive holding or something like that, and they have 9 or 10 seconds left
Right.
instead of 1 second left, that would be my only argument. Is you're truly only giving them at that point one shot at the end zone, and instead of maybe giving them a second try if something happens on
So you were
defense.
okay with that, with the
I was fine with it. I mean, I agree with you. Like in theory, it makes sense to give your offense as much time as
at the other side,
possible
yeah.
at the chance to go back down and maybe kick a go ahead or game winning field goal. But yeah, I don't. It didn't bother me as much.
So, all right, let's talk about the defense then, because again, I do think at the end they let them go down the field. They lucked out a little bit. Like they very well could have allowed two touchdown drives on the final two drives to blow the game. But for obviously for the majority of the game, they were super impressive. And I think what really stood out to me today, and I do think a thing to believe in going into the postseason, is the defense, but especially the defensive line. Jalen Carter comes back today. I thought he was really good. Jalex Hunt was unbelievable. I thought the defensive line really dominated against a really, really good Bills offensive line coming into the game. There was an argument that the Bills were a top five offensive line, if not top three offensive line in the league. I don't think on pure talent, but just the way the unit is played. And they were all over Josh Allen. Like they did an excellent job bringing him down in the backfield when they got to him. They did an excellent job blowing up plays. I mean, the Bills couldn't get anything going. Like for the majority of the game, they made the Bills almost looked like Kenny Pickett and the Raiders. Like that's how good they were. So I think you definitely leave this game feeling like going into the playoffs, and now we can talk about who the matchups will probably be. And it looks like it's going to be the lowest of the NFC West teams. So potentially San Francisco, Seattle, or LA. Like I can definitely picture this defense in that first playoff game holding the Rams to 20 points, 21 points, 17 points. Like the Bills offense, I think is every bit as good as the Rams offense. And I think especially today going into this, a concern was would the Bills be able to run the ball all over the Eagles defense? Because I do think this year when they face good rushing offenses, they've struggled. And they mostly, I'm going to have to look at the final stats here, but it feels like they completely shut them down. Like they certainly didn't dominate the game with running the ball. So I look at the defense and I say the defensive line was elite. The secondary was very good. Gave up a few big plays down the field, but for the most part, completely shut down the Bills. Again, only 12 points allowed. Really should have been 14, but it ends up being 12. So I definitely think you leave this game, while the offense certainly was not good, another game where you look and go, yes, the defense clearly carried this team. And I think in the playoffs, like against the Rams, especially against the Seahawks, against the 49ers, it really might only take 21 to 24 points for the Eagles to advance straight through the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think if you want to be encouraged by the offense, think about how the defense won, and it was by Josh Allen making big mistakes, right? I
Yep.
mean, think about the fumble in the first half, which led to the Eagles' only touchdown,
I
right? I
thought it
mean,
was a
that was
bad
a
call,
huge
by the
play.
way.
Yeah, I mean, I
I mean, he
really think
clearly
it,
is like throwing
but
it,
it was
but
like a
whatever.
tuck rule, and it was
Yeah.
weird to me that they reviewed it and it came back and just said like, yeah, couldn't tell. Sorry, we're moving
Mhm.
on. Like it just felt like a weird ruling on that. But that cost them, right? Josh Allen taking that huge sack, which I know they probably weren't going to kick the field goal there, but obviously that field goal looks huge in the final score. And hey, if you only get 2 or 3 yards, maybe you're going for it on fourth down instead of punting from midfield and essentially giving up
Yeah.
on that drive. But on the flip side, I think the one thing that doesn't necessarily worry me about the defense, because this is what Josh Allen does, is they do allow some big plays, right? Like they allowed
The
the
defense
big
does.
play,
Agreed.
the defense does. And, that would be the one thing if you look at some of the more explosive offenses that they might play in the playoffs, especially if you have to go to a warmer weather place or if you have to go somewhere indoors, that would be my concern with them. But the flip side is if you are playing outside, if you are playing tight playoff football, the fact that the offense doesn't turn the ball over out that much,
Yep.
the Los Angeles Chargers game notwithstanding, the fact that Jalen Hurts did take care of the football is a huge reason why they won this game.
So I was going to actually say that next is like the next talking point is that while the offense was bad and they were bad, like the formula is still taking care of the ball. They won the turnover battle today. I'm sure Nick's going to bring that up. It was something he stressed all week, right? 40-2 when they win the turnover battle. And it's funny because as much as they talk about playing complementary football, and I didn't think today was complementary football, the offense did not help the defense out, especially at the end of the game there where they need to kill clock. They get -2 yards on the drive and only kill a minute something off. Like they really hung the defense out to dry and it almost burned them. Like the turnover battle is something that is in some ways like the only joint stat where the two teams can do it together. Like the defense has to either take the ball or the offense has to not turn it over, and they have to do it together. And that was the difference today. And while Josh Allen has been better with taking care of the football this year, I think that the main difference between him and Jalen Hurts over the past few years has been Jalen takes care of the ball and Josh Allen doesn't. And if you think back to when Jalen beat him in 2023, that crucial interception he threw to James Bradbury towards the end of the game helped the Eagles win that game. Today, I know it's early in the game, but the Bills had just gotten that big play. The Eagles offense was doing what it ended up doing for most of the game, absolutely nothing. Josh Allen fumbles the ball. Again, I think an incomplete pass, but he fumbles it, and the Eagles offense makes them pay. So on a day where it was wet, it was tense, and they definitely could have like let this thing slip away, and they almost did. I do think Jalen Hurts deserves credit for not making like a big time mistake there. I thought his accuracy wasn't great today. There were definitely a few passes I thought could have been completed that he missed, but he never truly put the ball in harm's way. I guess there was one check down that kind of like could have been intercepted, but the ball was pretty out of bounds. I don't think he was ever really going to get it. So I think that what the positive with the offense is no fumbles, took care of the ball, never put the ball in harm's way. And if you have a defense that is going to allow in the teens, you're more than likely going to end up winning the majority of those games. Like if the defense holds opposing offenses to under 20 points and you take care of the ball, like that is the formula. And I thought today they did a good job of that.
And the funny thing is, if we had done a pod at halftime like we normally do, I feel like our tone about the offense would have been completely different, right?
I
Like
was
they
thinking
ran the
this,
ball
yeah,
pretty
100%.
consistently. Jalen made a couple really big plays on third down, and even in the second half, even though they weren't throwing the ball, he went, 0 for 6 or 0 for 7. Second game this year, by the way, that they won a game with 0 second half completions,
Crazy.
which
6, yeah.
feels ridiculous. But that's Kevin Petula for you, just
Whoa,
making
whoa, whoa,
history on
whoa.
a
I don't
weekly
know if that's
basis.
yeah. Okay, all right, there we go. Yeah, all right. I was thinking like we're not gonna do now. Like, but really quick, not to interject, but do you think they got conservative, or do you think they didn't execute?
I think. I mean, I think Jimmy Kemsky just tweeted like of their 5 drives in the second half, they went run on first and second down on 4 of them. I mean, it was clear that that's what their game plan was in the second half, and they
But
just
but but
weren't.
but like the Bills' deep run defense is really bad. You're up 13. I know 13's not the end all be all, but like you're trying to get your defense some rest. You're trying to get things going. Like I get why that would be viewed as conservative, but I do think there is game plan. There's like real game reason to do that as well.
I guess, but like, at what point do you think, hey, maybe this isn't working? We should try something
Yeah, no,
else.
that's fair too.
Like
Yeah.
I understand, kind of where they're at. And like I said, like they didn't turn the ball over. They clearly decided they were going to play as conservative as possible in the second half, and it worked, right? Like the result is a result. They did win as much as it was, simply by the skin of their teeth, and because Josh Allen missed a guy wide open in the end
Yeah.
zone
And he
on a
really
2-point
missed that guy.
conversion.
Like that dude was wide open. The more replays I see, like they got
And as great
very
as the
lucky.
defense was, I will say they did seem to wear down at the end of the game. Those
Agreed.
last
Yeah.
2 drives,
Yeah.
the pass rush was a lot slower getting to him, which, they were on the field for 35 minutes against a guy who's the reigning NFL MVP. So I understand that it was exhausting and it was a tiring effort. But yeah, I mean, I think when you look at this game, there are 2 things. You can either be super encouraged by the defense and you can go into the postseason saying, this is why we're going to win. Or you can look at the offense and say, this is going to cost us a trip to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I do think you'll hear people say this week that it was tough conditions, rainy conditions. But if we're going to say that, then you have to then also take away from the defensive performance because the Bills were playing in the same weather. So I actually don't think the weather, like,
Bills also
I,
put up 330 yards.
yeah, the
Like,
Bills,
as much as we talk
yes,
about how dominant the defense was,
that's a
and
good point.
it's
That's a good
partially
point.
because the Eagles' offense wasn't on the field that much, was only on the field for 24 minutes. The
Yeah,
Bills did average 4.5 yards per play, which isn't good, which isn't great.
right.
But they did put up
But
330 yards.
300,
The
yeah.
Eagles put up 190.
So they almost doubled them up.
Yeah.
So the Bills almost doubled. That's a good point. So I don't know. It felt like if they were going to win this game, I would leave feeling way more encouraged, but it just feels like a step back. Some questions to quickly before I have to get to the locker room. First, we'll see what happens tonight with San Francisco and Chicago. If Chicago loses the game, then the Eagles have a real chance at the 2 seed because next week the Bears play the Lions, the Eagles play Washington. The Bears obviously have more to play for than the Lions, but they could potentially lose. The result of a win today is you do now have a chance at the number 2 seed. Would you play your starters next week against Washington, depending on what happens with Chicago, or are you resting them next week no matter what?
I think I would maybe rest certain key starters, but I think having the 2 seed over the 3 seed is a huge benefit because not
Yes.
only do you get probably Green Bay as the 7 seed, who's currently playing with a backup quarterback, and they don't have their best defensive player. Like they're banged up compared to whoever's third in the NFC West, but you also get a second home game that following week in the division round if you move on. Like I think those 2 advantages are a much bigger advantage than maybe being a little more banged up
Yeah.
going
So
into
now
the wild card.
the question is,
I would feel
like,
differently if Jalen gets a concussion or something.
right now, I mean, Tanner McKee, I think, could in theory just beat Washington. Like Washington,
He
has
did
nothing
it
to play
last
for.
year. He
Did it
won
last.
week 17
Yeah,
against the
exactly.
Giants.
So I think like you could potentially play a game where you put some backup, some starters, and you play to win. But while
You
as
also
much
only
as
have a 53-man roster. Like you can't put out 22
exactly,
backups.
yeah.
Like there are
So
going to be
like
some starters out there.
as much as I think I would have said I value the health going into the postseason, I do think the point about the 7 where you play the Packers and getting the second home playoff game. And again, like I'm not saying the weather is that I don't think it should be viewed as a full excuse, but this offense does not operate well in weather. It just doesn't. Like against the Packers and the Lions, I heard for 2 straight weeks, well, it was windy and it was cold, and they scored in the low teens or 9 points, I think, in one of them, whatever it was, 10 points. And then tonight, in a cold, rainy environment, they only got 13 points. Now, what you said is true. If we would have done a halftime pod, I think we would have been like, they're on pace for 30 points, like blah, blah, blah. Like we would have felt better. But the second half did happen. It was almost an inverse of what normally happens with the halftime pod, honestly. So, but regardless, they win the game. They now still have a chance at the 2 seed. A win's a win. They're now 3 straight wins, if I'm not mistaken. So entering the
Yes.
playoffs kind of hot, but it did feel like today was a step back. We'll have a lot to talk about throughout the week. We're not going to get into it now because I feel like we shouldn't do it. But James did go through a table in the
He did
loosest.
eventually send us a text, by the way.
He did. Yes, he did. So
So he is
we've heard
alive
he is
somewhere.
alive. The hip is okay. So look, it's gonna be New Year's week. We'll have some pods. We'll get into some things. They did win. I think you should still feel excited about it. But man, not a good showing from the offense. So that'll do it for the Go Birds pod, for the post game pod. I will have a daily for you tomorrow, and we'll have some pods for you throughout the week. Tucker, thank you for filling in for
No problem.
James, and we'll all talk to you guys later. Until then, he's Elliot. I'm Tucker. Talk to you guys later.